Is this circuit a sequential circuit? Is this entire circuit a sequential circuit? That is my question. People, please answer. Is it a sequential circuit? Yes or no? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Why it is a sequential circuit? Why is this circuit a sequential circuit? Why is this circuit a sequential circuit? Tell me one thing. Why is this circuit a sequential circuit? This circuit is a sequential circuit because it has a memory element. It is having one JK flip-flop and D flip-flop, which are flip-flops of memory elements, correct? So it is having memory element JK flip-flop, D flip-flop, along with some combination circuits, that is AND, OR, and even OR gate is there here. So such circuit is called as a sequential circuit, and that's why it is a combination of both sequential and it is combination of both combinational and sequential circuit. Hence why it is called as sequential circuits. Understanding memory circuits. This is a combination circuit ido, again a memory ido. So combinational circuit together with memory gives me a sequential circuit. Is that understandable? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Next question. Il output
Sir.
F1 depends on what? Output F1 depends on what? This OR gate output alla. This OR gate input another. One input is flip-flop output, which is nothing but a present state. Correct? Yes or no? Q is the output given. Q output of the flip-flop is given as the input for OR gate. One input for OR gate. What is another input? Another input is coming from this point A. Correct? Yes or no? Another input is coming from this point, which is A. A is directly fed here. So output F depends on, this output F1 depends on present state, correct? And even on the present input also, A. Howdari? Is that understandable? Don't worry about what circuit is doing. I'm just defining sequential circuit. Is it math?
Yes, sir.
You'll not F1 depends on what? F1 depends on output of D flip-flop also, and F1 even depends on A also. Understanding? That's why it is output is depending on both F1 and A. That is A and input to the entire system. And what is this Q? Q is nothing but the output of D flip-flop. So output depends on inputs and even on the memory output. So that's why it is a sequential circuit. Understanding? Yes or no? Hello?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
I'm not audible?
Screen is not visible.
Screen is not visible.
Yes, sir.
Now is it visible?
Yes. Yes, sir.
I'm discussing about this circuit. I was discussing about this circuit. Is this circuit a sequential circuit? Yes or no? This is a sequential circuit, yes or no?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Why is it a sequential circuit? Because it has this flip-flop and even it has a combination circuit here. Memory
Combination.
element with combination circuit. Understanding? Ille F1 no output ಎದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ depend ada. It depends on output of flip-flop also, and even it depends on one more input for this OR gate is what? One more input for this OR gate is given through A input here. ಈ A ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? System normal input ಇದೆ, user dependent input, and one more input for this OR gate is system generated input, that is memory output of your D flip-flop. Correct? So this F1 depends on the output of the memory element and even on the input applied to the system. That's why this is called as sequential output. Am I understandable?
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Hungry.
Yes, sir.
Output not only depends on the memory element, output also depends on the inputs. Is that understandable? So we will let's look into it in a better fashion. So what is the thing given here? The present state and the external input determines the output of the sequential circuit. Correct? Do you agree with this? The present state of the memory output in the present state. The information stored at the memory element defines present state. How do?
Yes.
ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಡಿ ಫ್ಲಾಪ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಕ್ಯೂ ಮತ್ತು ಕ್ಯೂ ಬಾರ್ ಬರ್ತೈತಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಂತ ನಾನು ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೇನೆ ನಾನು ಸೊ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಅಲಾಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟರ್ನಲ್ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಡಿಟರ್ಮೈನ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ದ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಸೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸರ್ಕ್ಯೂಟ್ am I understandable yes or no
Yes, sir.
so now depending on this I will be classifying the sequential circuits into two that is asynchronous sequential circuit and synchronous sequential circuit ಏನಂದ್ರೆ sequential circuits are basically classified into two groups that is asynchronous and synchronous in synchronous sequential circuits input signal can affect the memory element what is the meaning in synchronous sequential circuit input signals one second so in synchronous sequential circuit so in synchronous sequential circuit input signals can't affect so it is can't affect the memory element at discrete instant of time whereas in asynchronous sequential circuit input signals can affect memory element at any instant of time so here the change is you know these statements are better understandable when I solve a problem okay? I will explain this statements in form of a problem okay? So sequential circuits ಒಳಗೆ ಏನದ synchronous sequential circuits ಒಳಗೆ ನಾವು ಕಲಿಲಿಕತ್ತೀನಿ so synchronous sequential circuits ಒಳಗೆ output depends on there are two classifications that is Mealy model and Moore model there are two classifications one is Mealy model and Moore model so what are the definition of a Mealy model and Moore model so definition of a Moore model is the output depends only on present state of flip-flop what is the output depending on output depends only on the present state of flip-flop whereas in Mealy model output depends on present state of the flip-flop along with the input supplied to the system what is the difference in Moore model output depends only on present state of the flip-flop whereas output is not depending on what the inputs whereas in Mealy model output depends on present state and the input supplied to the system is this point very clear
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
More model ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ output depends only on present state ಅಂದ್ರೆ memory flip flop output ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ output ಅದರ ಮೇಲೆ model ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ output depends on flip flop output ಮೇಲೆ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅದಲ್ಲದೆ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ಸ್ ಏನು ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾನಲ್ಲ ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೂ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಇರ್ತೈತಿ ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಆನ್ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಮೋರ್ ಮಾಡಲ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಆನ್ present state of the flip flop is that understandable
Yes.
yes or no
Yes, sir.
remember all these definitions which I am telling now
Yes.
you have to buy ahead all these definitions right so what are there are several definitions here which you are supposed to understand the first one is input variable what is the input variable all variables that originate outside the sequential machine is called as input variable all variables that originate outside the sequential machine are said to be input variables ಅರ್ಥ ಏನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ this is my input logic so ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು sequential machine ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು if I take this consider this entire block is my sequential machine ತಿಳಿತು ಯಾಕೆ sequential machine ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಇದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ I may use some AND or gate NOT gate here I may use some flip flops here ಯಾವ್ದು JK SR D T I may use some more AND gates or NOR gates here but input variable is a variable which is independent of all of this input logic ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಸಂಬಂಧ ಇರಂಗಿಲ್ಲ ಮೆಮೊರಿನೂ ಏನು ಸಂಬಂಧ ಇರಂಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಲಾಜಿಕ್ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಸಂಬಂಧ ಇರಂಗಿಲ್ಲ input variable is user defined which is not depending on this entire sequential machine that's why it is called as input variable is that understandable so what is the input variable input variable is all variables that originate outside the sequential machine are said to be input variables understanding yes or no and next one the output variable all variable that exists in the sequential machine are said to be output variable that exits the sequential machine you'll not how many variable is exiting the sequential machine here so this variable is exiting the sequential machine yes the variable sequential machine le hora barutalla that will be a output variable idu ya variable ida this will be a output variable this one will be a output variable. The variable which exits the sequential machine are said to be output variables. So next one, state variable. What is a state variable? The output of memory element defines state of a sequential machine. So the output of the memory element itself is called as state variable. The output of memory element itself is called as state machine is called as state variable. The output of memory element itself is called as state variable. Here is the state variable. Where do you expect the state variable to be?
Output of
ಇಲ್ಲಿ memory illada. So in bracket I have written here capital S. You have to even remember the notations. Input variable ಏನಂತಾರ capital I. The notation for input variable is capital I. The notation for capital output variable is capital O, and the notation for memory variable is capital S. Memory variable ಏನಂತಾರ memory ಏನು output ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ state variable ಅಂತಾರ. So state variable notation ಏನು capital S. Understanding? Yes or no?
yes, sir. Yes.
Last one is excitation variable. The excitation variable are the inputs to the memory element. ಏನಂತಾರ ನೋಡ್ರಿ, whatever the input I feed to this D flip flop, JK flip flop, SR flip flop or T flip flop, this excitation variable, it excites or it is acting as a change for this output variable. E na ಹೆಂಗ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೇನಲ್ಲ, depending on the value of E, I'll be getting the value of S. Understanding? So this variable E excites this memory to change. That's why it is called as excitation variable, which is nothing but an input to a memory. So the excitation variables are input to the memory element. The name excitation is used because the variable excites the memory to change. Understanding? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Next. The last definition, the state of a sequential machine. The state of a sequential machine is defined by content of the memory. So what is the present state? That is nothing but ಇದು ಮೊದಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದ ನಾನು. The output state of sequential machine is nothing but the content of the memory. What is the memory content? ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಂತಾರೆ state of sequential machine ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. So first one. I expect all of you to unmute yourself. Sorry, mute yourself. Mute ಮಾಡ್ರಿ. Now we shall discuss about what is the Mealy model and Moore model and how it looks like. So now the definition, I'll get back to the definition once again. So that in Mealy model, what is the definition? The output depends only on, in Mealy model, the output depends only on present state of the flip flop, and it is not depending on the inputs to the system. Whereas in Moore model, output depends only on present state and it doesn't depend on what you call the input variables. Whereas in Mealy model, output depends on present state along with the inputs. Output depends on present state along with the inputs. So we'll check here. So this is a Moore model and this one is a Mealy model. So in Moore model first there is the input logic, memory and output logic. This is common. Here also there is input logic, memory and output logic. How these are different? Look here. Here the output depends only on the output of your memory. Is there anywhere that is there any condition or anywhere any point where output depends on the input? You know, check ಮಾಡ್ರಿ. Output logic to this output logic, the input is only from the memory. Getting? Yes or no? ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ವೇರಿಯಬಲ್ ಕಡೆ ಏನದ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಲಾಜಿಕ್ ಅದ. ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಲಾಜಿಕ್ ಎದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಆಗತ್ತೆ? ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಲಾಜಿಕ್ only and only depending on the output of this memory. Getting? Yes or no? There is one more line which is fed back as a feedback path. Don't worry about the feedback path. But I am concerned with only the output variable. Output variable depends on this output logic, and this output logic depends on the memory. Is there anywhere that it is output logic is directly connected to the input variable?
No, sir.
Input variable is connected to the
No,
output
sir.
variable via memory. Understanding? And whatever the memory output is there, that will be processed at the output variable side. That's why it is called as what? More model. Where more model output depends only on memory output. Understanding? Whereas in melee, you'll note the output logic, the diagram is entirely same. The only one path extension is there, that is this point. The input variable point is now fetched over to the output logic. Understanding? So here the output logic depends on even the input variable. Output depends even on the input variable, and even it depends on the state of the memory. Getting everyone? All of you understanding?
Yes.
Yes,
Is
sir.
input variable I is a, then is a excitation variable, then is a state, yes. So this is the output variable O. Here output logic is getting input from S and even from I. Getting? How do you know? Output logic is getting input from I, that is input variable, and even from the memory S. So that's why it is called as melee model, because in melee model output depends on input variable and also in the output state of your memory. Getting this? Yes or
Yes,
no?
sir.
Sir.
Illenada
Yes,
output depends on only on S variable. Notation S andrena memory output ಏನಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಅದ್ರ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ output depend ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Input ಮೇಲೆ depend ಆಗಲಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. So that's why it is called as more model and this is called as melee model. You understood the difference? Yes or no?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Fine.
sir.
Now in this diagram, now in this diagram, now tell me, this diagram is for input melee model or more model?
Melee model.
Melee.
Mainly.
ಇದು ಮೇಲೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ ಮೋರ್ ಮಾಡಲ್?
Melee model.
Melee.
Melee model.
ಎಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಮಾಡಲ್. ಯಾಕೆ? ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ ಒಂದು ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನದ, ಹಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ ಒಂದು ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನದ, ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಡಿ ಫ್ಲಾಪ್ ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ ನಥಿಂಗ್ ಬಟ್ ಎಸ್. ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಟ್ರೀಟ್ as ಎಸ್, whereas another input is nothing but input variable a which I call it as I. So output depends on input variable and the state of the memory. Understanding? That's why which model it is?
Melee model.
Melee model. Understanding? Yes or no? What are the input variables here? A, B, C, D are the input variables. What are the excitation variables? You'll note. Who excites this flip flop? Who excites this flip flop? You'll note. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಕೊಡತ್ತಾನೆ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್? ಡಿ ಫ್ಲಾಪ್ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನದ? ಏ ಹಿಯರ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಶಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಜೆ ಅಂಡ್ ಕೆ. ಏನು ಮಾಡಿನ ಇಲ್ಲಿ? ಐ ಆಮ್ ಶಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಜೆ ಅಂಡ್ ಕೆ. ವಿಚ್ ಫ್ಲಿಪ್ ಫ್ಲಾಪ್ ಇಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆಡ್? ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಜೆ ಕೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಿದಾನೆ? ಐ ಆಮ್ ಶಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಜೆ ಅಂಡ್ ಕೆ. Which flip flop it is?
T.
If I short J and K, which flip flop will I get? Huh? Alri, which flip flop is obtained by shorting J and K? Hello?
Yes,
When I
sir.
short J and K, the flip flop obtained is D. When I use a NOT gate between J and K, the flip flop obtained is T. Is that understandable? Kalsin ilri? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
So, idu D flop na, idu D flop na. Just the representation is changed. What is the input to the flip flop? One input is X, one input is clock. So input to the memory is nothing but excitation variable. So X and clock are excitation variables. Is that understandable? Input to the memory is what? X here and clock. Memory ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Flip flop. Flip flop input ಏನದ? X ಅದ, one ಇನ್ನೊಂದು clock ಅದ, ಎರಡಕ್ಕೂನು. So excitation variable is what? X and clock. Is that understandable? What is the output variable? The output variable is Q and Q bar. You can even call it as state variables. Sorry, output variable is F1, whereas state variable is Q and Q bar. Is that understandable? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Next. This one is an example for more model. Why this is an example for more model? Can anyone tell me? See, this is a combination circuit. This is a combination circuit, and this is the memory element, and this is again a memory element. What is the output of memory? Yes. This is the output of memory element. This is S. Getting? And say this is the output F1. Here output F1 depends on both S and S only. Is it depending on I?
No, sir.
No, sir.
That's why it is a more
No,
model.
sir.
That's why it is a more model. Understanding?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Next, melee machine notation. So we will move ahead. and we will start with the Melee machine notation. So Melee state notation. So Melee machine. How do I read this notation? How many states are there here? There are two states here. Yes, state adavile. There are two states. That is A and B. How many states are there? Hello?
Two.
Two
There are two
Two
states.
states.
Now we will understand how to read this. In order, always it is input divided by output. Input versus output. Understanding? Notation followed here is always it is input by output. Tala ho kete? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So I am in.
Yes,
I will think that I am in state A. Fine. I will go to this machine is telling me when will I go to state B and when will I stay in state A. Is that understandable? Yes or no? There is one more arrow missing. That arrow is this. I will tell you what is this arrow. So look here. X bar. I have written a bar here. X bar slash y bar means what? Which one is the input variable? Which one is the output variable?
bar is the input variable.
Huh?
X bar input, Y bar
ಅಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ
Bar.
ಎಕ್ಸ್ ಬಾರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನೋ ಝೀರೋ ಅಂದಂಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ ವೈ ಬಾರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನೋ ವೈ ಝೀರೋ ಅಂದಂಗೆ ನಾನು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಏನು ಕೇಳ್ತೇನೆ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ವೇರಿಯಬಲ್ ಯಾವ್ದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ ಬಾರ್ ಅಂತ ವೇರಿಯಬಲ್ there will not be any variable called as x bar. X is the input variable and y is the output variable. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
X
Yes,
is
sir.
the input variable, y is the output variable. Is that clear? So when x is 0, x bar ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನರ್ಥ? When x is 0, what is y?
One.
When x is 0, y is 0, means output is 0, and I will remain in the same state, that is A only. That is the meaning. Understanding? That is how you are supposed to read this. Tala ho kete? When x is 0,
Yes, sir.
y is 0, and I will remain at the same state A. Understanding? When x is 1, ಇಲ್ಲಿ x bar ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರ್ದೇನಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ? Did I write anywhere x bar here?
No, sir.
No. So x is 1 here ಅನ್ನಂಗ ಅರ್ಥ ತಿಳಿತಾ? So when x is 1, I will go from state A to state B, making y as 0 only. What is the output y? Still it is 0 only. Understanding?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Next, here I am in state B now. I am in state B now. So now I am in state B. So I will stay if x is 1. ಇದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಏನಿದೆ? If x is 1, I will stay here in state B only and output y is 0. And if x is 0, I will go to state A and making output y as 1. Getting? Did you all understand? Hello? Hello?
yes, yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If x is 0, y is 0, I'll remain in state A. If x is 1, y is 0, I'll go to state B. And now depending on B state, in B state, if x is 0, I will remain in same state, that is B, making y as 0. And if when I'm in B state, if x is 0, I'll go to state A, making y as 1. Is that point very clear?
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Next, more. In more state notation, the state output is fixed. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ A can take ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ A ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, this state can take the value 0 or 1. B, this state also can take the value 0 or 1. ಹೌದು, ಹೆಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ? ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ ಏನಾಗ x 0 ಇತ್ತು, ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನು ಬಂತ? y 0 ಐತಿ. When x is 1, what is the output? Again y is 0 only. ಇಲ್ಲಿ B ನಾ ಬರ್ತೇನೆ. x 1 ಇತ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ y ಏನೈತಿ? 0 ಐತಿ. x 0 ಇದ್ರೆ ಏನೈತಿ? y 1 ಐತಿ. Getting? Yes or no? Are you understanding? ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ B, this state can take value 0 or you can even take the value 1. That's the meaning. But when I come to more here, more state machine, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನದ? ನಂದು state output ಯಾವಾಗೂ fixed ಇರ್ತದೆ. So which state is this? This state is A state. and this state cannot take the value 1 as its output is fixed at 0. This state is what state? This state is B state, and its output is always fixed at 1. It cannot state the value 0. Artha to? A state cannot have the value 1 and B state cannot have the value output as 0. Artha to? Understanding?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes,
so ille ಏನು ಬರೆಯತನ ನಾನು? So here say x and y are the input variables. Say I am taking two variables x and y. Now, what is the meaning here is 0 0 ಅಂತ ಬರ್ದೇನೆ. So instead it is as good as writing x bar y bar. Means what? If x bar and y bar, if x is 0 and y is 0, I will remain in same state and that state value is 0. Even if x is 0 and y is 1, what will be the value equation? It will be x bar y. Then also I will be remaining in the same state a and output is 0. Is that point very clear?
Yes, sir.
yes,
Yes, sir.
Next, when will I change the state? When x is 1 and y is 0. X y bar, and when x is 1 and y is 1, I will be changing the state. Is that understandable?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will switch between the state. I will go from A to B and output will be 1 when x is 1 and y is 0 and x is 1 and y is 1. ಹಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾರಿ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತು? Now I am in B state. I am in state B now. So when A, see look here, B and x and y are 0 0. I am remaining the same state, that is B state only. Y is 1, output is 1, and here x y bar, again I am remaining the same state and output is 0. For these two conditions I am going for the change of state, that is B to A. Is that understandable? Yes or no? Two variables.
Yes.
There are two variables. How many combinations should be there? 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1. Correct? So in when I consider A case, there are four combinations already here: 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1. When I consider B, again there are all four combinations: 0 0 1 0 0 1 1 1. So this is how a system is defined. Understanding, everyone? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So next question, next thing is difference between melee and more. Here output depends on present state of the flip flop in more. Here another output depends on present state as well as on inputs. Next, input changes do not affect the output. Correct? ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನೈತಿ ಬರೀ ಮೆಮರಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಡಿಪೆಂಡ್ ಐತಿ. ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆದರೂ ಸಹ ಮೆಮರಿ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ output may not change. Understanding? Input changes does not affect the memory. So sorry, they affect the output. Here input changes may affect the output. Because the output depends on input also. Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನದ ಡಿಪೆಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಆನ್ ಫ್ಲಿಪ್ ಫ್ಲಾಪ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಇದೆ. More output depends on flip flop output. That's why output depends only on the flip flop output. Here the output depends on flip flop output and even on the inputs. So if input changes, output will change. Here, if input changes, output will not change because output doesn't depends on input here in more. Getting this? Next,
Yes, sir.
it requires more number of states for implementing the same function. It requires less number of states for implementing the same function. E point in you will understand after solving some problems. This point I will get back to this point after solving some problems. Right? So it requires more number of states for implementing the same function. It requires less number of states for implementing the same function. How it is exactly, we will come to know after solving a problem. So we will start with the problem. So definition of melee model, more model, input variable, state variable, excitation variable, output variable, and difference between melee and more. And melee and more block diagrams, all of them are important. And even melee state notation and more state notation, all of them are important. These are the theory questions which will be probably asked for 5 to 6 months. Is that understandable?
Yes,
And these
sir.
block diagrams are also very important. Explain melee model antantana. Now again you have to draw the block diagram, explain input variable, excitation variable, output variable, what is the definition of the melee model, and you have to write a melee model notation here. It bardella melee state notation isn't bardಬೇಕು. So conversely, same thing even for more model. Getting all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
So, and even difference between melee and more can be asked. So, all these are theory questions which will be covered, which have been covered. So, we will start with the problem. So, now, how many states are there here? This is the problem. Obtain state machine for the following melee model using JK flop, D flop, T flop, and SR flop. This is the question. Obtain the state machine for the following melee model using JK, SR, D, and T flop. So now, this diagram is the state diagram. What is the state diagram? It is A, B, C, and D. And can anyone tell me how many states are there, how many input variables are there, and how many output variables are there?
Four states are
Four
Four
states.
state type.
Yes, there are four states. What are the states?
A, B,
A, B,
C,
C.
A,
D.
B, C, D.
Yes, correct. How many inputs are there?
Two input
Three
variable.
inputs. Like
Three.
that.
Yes, sir.
I will be very, I will be precisely very clear. Probably you are not looking out. Either x, y bar z other. This is divided by z. Good. How many input variables are there and how many output variables are there?
Two input variable.
There are two input variables, correct? And how many output variable?
One output
One.
variable.
There is one only one output variable. This is a state diagram given. This is given in the question itself. Fine. So for this state diagram, you are supposed to write what you call the state machine. That is the question. You have to obtain a state machine. You have to obtain a state machine. So using which flip flop? Once using JK flop, once using D flop, once using T flop, and it may be asked for any other flip flops. Fine. In one problem, I am covering four problems here. Fine. So in exam, they'll ask you people to find the output for at least one flip flop. Fine. Next. Now look here. Now one second. Now tell me one thing. I am in state A. Correct? Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
So fine. Now I am in state A. From state A, how many outputs should be there? How many combinations should be there? Yes, input adawa. Yes, input adawa. There are two inputs. There are two inputs. There are two inputs. So there will be four combinations 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. Correct?
One,
This
one.
is mandatory. There are four inputs. I will be having all the four combinations. Now, my question is from A also there should be four combinations done. From B also there should be four combinations. And from C also there should be four combinations. And from D also there should be four combinations. Is my point very clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now
Yes,
closely
sir.
looking at now everyone explain me how. Fine. A na. So I am in state A. I have only one variable here. X bar here and X here. What is the meaning of this? I'll consider I'm in state A now. I'm having only one variable here. X bar, one more is X. Y is not there and even Z is not there. What should I do?
Don't care.
Yes. The variable which are not available, that input variable I can consider it as a don't care. Don't care andre na? It may be 0 or it may be 1. Getting? Understanding? All of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But if output is not
Yes, sir.
mentioned, if output is not mentioned, you cannot take output as don't care. Output will be 0. Output mention ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ output 0 ಅಂತ ತಗೋಬೇಕು. This is a rule. You understand this rule? Yes or no? No.
Yes, sir.
I have written only x bar here. Means what? How many combinations it is covering? This x bar is covering how many combinations out of these four? X bar ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? X 0 ಐತೆ ಅಂದಂಗೆ ಆಗ್ತದಲ್ಲ?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
ಹೌದ್ರಿ? So I will take two combinations here. X is 0 the y can be either 1 or 0. Sorry, y can be either 1 or 0. So how many combinations covered here? 0 1 0 0. Understanding? X ಅದ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. So how many combinations here? X 1 ಅದ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. Y is don't care. Means what? Y will be either 0 or 1. Getting?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes,
Hey, did you people understand?
Yes, sir.
sir.
Now, I will explain once again. I am in state A and there are two input variables and one output variable. So, but everywhere there is no, everywhere I can see only one output variable mentioned. The other output missing input variable, I can put it as the missing input variable should be considered as don't care. When I consider missing input variable as a don't care, I have to feed all the values here for missing input variable. That is, x bar is given here. So, x bar can take the value 0. X bar is 0, that's fixed. Y can take the value 1 or 0. And I have written x here. So, x can take the value only one value because it is written as x. Y can take the value again 0 or 1. So, I am covering all the four combinations here. So, how will you read this? If x is 0 1, if x and y, if xy is 0 1 or 0 0, I will remain in same state A. And if x is 1 0 or 1 1, I will be going for changing the state from A to B. Is that point very clear?
Yes, sir.
Next, I'll consider now state as node B. What is it specifying? How many outputs are there? How many output arrows are going from B? This is one output arrow going from B. And this is one more output arrow going from B. There are only two output arrows going. And obviously these arrows are having the value as Y and X is missing. So what is X?
Don't care.
Don't
Why
care. So
either
what are the
one-
combinations? What will be the combination?
0.
Y will be always 0. X is first number, so I will feed the value to left hand side, not right hand side. Getting?
Yes, sir.
X can be 1 or 0. Illen baritanna combination y yavaglu 1 irtati. X can be either 1 or 0.
0.
So if input x and y as 1 0, I will stay in B. Even if it is 0 0, I will stay in B. If it is 0 1, I will go from B to C. And even if it is if x and y both are 1, I will go from B to C. That's the meaning. Understanding? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Next. Now I am in C state. In C state, how many output arrows are there? This is one arrow. This is one arrow going to B. This is one arrow going to A. And this is one more arrow. This is going to D. Getting? Yes or no? Yes
sir.
or no? Now, when will I go to B? When x is 1, y is 0. So, for when x is 1, y is 0, I will go to output. So, I will change the state from C to B. Next, when x is 0 and y is 0, I will change the state from C to A. When x is 0 and y is 1, I will change the state from C to D. Understanding?
Yes, sir.
Everyone understanding this?
Yes, sir.
There should be one more input variable. I will check it. Probably I am missing one more combination. Yeah, combination miss I xy is missing, correct? When xy
Yes,
is a term, where should I go? I'm missing other. I'll check I will check it and I will get back to in the next class. Fine. Next, D. Again, how many arrows are there? There is only one arrow going from D. One arrow going from D to A and one arrow staying at D. Correct? We will check how many combinations are there here. What are the combinations covered here? You know, plus and plus means even for this combination I will be staying here and even for this combination I will be staying here. Plus another. What is the combination here? X is 0, y is 1. Another x is 1, y is 0. I will stay in D on B state only. Next, I will go from D to A state. I will go from D to A state when x is 0 and y is 0, I will go from D to A making z as 0. Is this point very clear? Everywhere here z is 0. Everywhere here in all the combinations by default z will be 0. Getting? Now I will go from D to A when x is 1 and even when y is 1. X is 0, y is 0 ಇದ್ದಾಗ D to A ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಅವಾಗ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಏನಿರ್ತೈತಿ 0 ಇರ್ತೈತಿ. I will go from D to A when x is 1 and y is 1, but this time output will be 1. Is that point very clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is how I am
Yes,
going
sir.
to write the state table. So in state table, I have written the same thing here. Present state, if I consider it to be A, B, C, and D, the output states what I am changing here, that is noted here. Then I will be covering this thing in the next class. I will be solving this problem in the next class. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
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 So we shall wind up here.